And we are live with the first study group of the year. Hello, everyone. It is the pre-show. We got about 10 minutes before we get started. If you've tuned in, you can either join us here or you can jump ahead to the next steps at 10 minutes from now. We'll get officially started. This is the time where I go through and do things like make sure that I have recordings going, which I don't have. Let's get the recordings going. There we go. Get the Cylons going down here. You can't even see them very well in my configuration here. Let's see if I can get that one going. See, now we're spinning down here. That's the way we want it. And I need to... Oh, I haven't even done my podcast intro. So you guys get to sit in on the podcast intro. Let's get everybody. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. One moment while I sit through and do my podcast intro, which no longer is on the screen. Podcast. There it is. You'd think I have it memorized by now, and I probably do, but I feel like if I don't have it in front of me, something will go horribly wrong, right? So here's how it's going to go. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1A Plus Study Group. This study group was recorded on January 7th, 2025. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1A Plus Study Group After Show. This after show was recorded on January 7th, 2025. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. Okay, that takes care of all of the podcast intro. Hey, everybody. Hi. Hopefully we can get things going here. Chat room is already busy talking about things. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. Brian is taking his Security Plus exam. Obviously, we're doing A Plus today. Thank you for joining us on the live stream. My advice for exam day, if you are finishing up and you've already gone through videos, you've read the book, you've done some labs and Q&A, I really think going through the exam objectives is what you should be doing. It's a great checklist, so do that. Hello, Mal. Good to see you. Hope things are well down in the islands. We've got folks checking in from all over, and welcome to 2025 as well. I'm dealing with a little bit, or I'm working with some new equipment today. I've got a new video switcher. There's a little bit new going on with the audio, trying out a few extra things and features and tweaks. I'm not sure I'm dialed in exactly where I want to be yet, but we're getting there. And I think overall, I did some tests yesterday. Hopefully what you are hearing and what you are seeing online is something that is working for you. Hopefully you're able to at least hear us and see us. And I think that's the important part. So we'll get things going here shortly. There's another question in here about how long before CompTIA changes up their exams. Well, CompTIA obviously does not on a single day turn off one set of exams and turn another set on, thankfully. So everything we are doing today, everything you are working on with the A Plus right now is the only available A Plus version that you could take. So you are taking the right version. And this version will probably be available until the October-November timeframe of this year. So that means you've got plenty of time to study and pass this exam. So you will not have any rugs pulled out from underneath you. Nothing is going to change in the middle of your studies. As long as you finish all of your studies by the end of this year, which is really plenty of time, you'll be okay. You'll be all right. No worries there. They are going to release a new version of their exam series in the springtime. So months from now, you should see a new version. But that doesn't affect us. That only affects people who are getting started months from now. And you'll already have your certification months from now or be very close to finishing it up. So that's a normal process they do where they release a new version and then there's this awkward overlap period. It's not really awkward for you. It's more awkward for me. There's two separate exam versions. In this particular case, 4 separate exams that have to be managed But if you're already working on the what we call the 1100 series, the 220.11.01 and the 220.11.02, those are the right versions. Those are the ones you should be taking. Do not wait to take a new version that comes sometime in the future at a date that CompTIA has, at this point, not even announced. So that's what I try to explain to people is you could wait for the new version. In the meantime, everyone you're competing with to get those jobs has already got their A+. So there's no good reason to wait. If anything, there are very bad reasons to wait. So never, never, never wait to get certified. That is my recommendation to you. Never, never, never wait to get certified. All right, we got 5 minutes to go. 4 minutes, really. 4 minutes and or so. And we'll get things started here. Let's do a last check of cameras. Cameras are looking pretty good. Do I have my... I do have my circle up. So you can't really see this. Maybe I've put it over here. So I need to do a quick check of cameras here. Those look super good. Super, super good. It's 9 there. It is. We're good. I'm trying to get used to this new switch, trying to get things up and running a little bit better. Not a huge change to process and procedure here. I've got new controls in front of me. And so this will be a bit of a shakedown cruise, just a tiny bit of one. We'll figure it out. But I have been shaking it down here for a few weeks. So I'm working that. What is the date they convert to New Plus? They've not announced it. That's how far out it is, that we don't even know what the date is yet. They've not come up with it. So that's why I tell people, don't worry about what could possibly someday come in the future. That's not important to us at all. And in fact, whether you take the current exam and pass it, current exams and pass them and earn your A+, or you wait for some unknown reason, you wait and take the newer versions of the exams, you end up getting the same A+ cert. The end result is exactly the same. There's no benefit to getting a newer version of an A+ cert. In fact, the A+ cert has no version on it. When you pass the 2 exams, you earn your A+ certification. If you pass the 2 exams that are available now, you get your A+ certification. If you pass the 2 exams that are coming sometime in the future, we don't know when, but soon, some months from now, if you take those 2 exams, you're also A+ certified. There's no difference between those two. So that's why I tell people, don't wait. What are you waiting for? There's no good reason to wait. I think we all as humans would like to wait. I'm really good at procrastination. I'm super good. I have to have a very precise list, and I have to check off the list as we go. Don't be that person. Don't be me. You should go ahead and just get these done and work through it. I think that's an important consideration. We got about 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. I did not bring my drink in. I did not bring my my liquid. I'm going to need that before we get started. So I'm going to walk away. I'll be right back. All right, so much better. Let me plug myself in. How are we on time? We're great on time. I didn't even have to run or anything. You know what I didn't do is put my mic on properly. Let's do that, shall we? we're getting somewhere. Uh-oh, came off my ear. Top of the hour, everybody. Let's see if we can get a bit of a party started here. We are at the top of the hour. It's time to get things started. We just need, one of us needs to be better prepared. Here we go. Now we can get things going. How about a live stream, everybody? I think we should be able to get this up and running. Let's see if I can do exactly that. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2025 Professor Messer 220-1101 A+ study group. This is the study group where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we get to see how well you know some of this content. So a little bit of Q&A. If you are here live, thank you for joining us. You'll be able to participate interactively as I ask these questions. I'll tell you how all of that works in just a moment. Also, if you're watching this on the replay, do not worry. We have plenty of ways to keep track, and you can follow along with us. It'll be great. We'll have everything that you will need to be able to understand what questions you will want to ask and what things might be available to you. Now, if you are here live, we would love it if you joined us live. One of the ways that you could do that is by using that link right here. The one that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. This is the link that will provide you access to questions that I will ask during this first hour. Also, for those of you that are joining us, stick around for the second hour. If you have questions that you would like to ask of me, I have a link at the top of that link. A link at the top of the link. There's a button at the top of that link for professormesser.com/QA. That is a place where you can submit questions to me at any time. So this would be just a great place to go for all of that. Now, if you are working towards getting some of these questions and you're on that link, professormesser.com/QA, I have a question waiting for you right now. So you can certainly go to that link and get the questions asked of that particular connection. In fact, the question that I have is what we call our rewind question. It's a question from our study group of last month. So for those of you that were here for the December study group, you might remember this one. The question asks, a user in the marketing department would like to add a hotmail.com address to their mobile device. Which of the following configurations would be the best choice? Would it be iCloud, POP3, Gmail, IMAP, or Outlook.com? Now, we have a number of standing rules here in our study group. The first standing rule is please no answers in the chat room. So for those of you that would like to answer this question, you should follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can follow that link with us. Another thing you might want to consider as we are going through and working these different configurations is that all of these questions that you see that we're going to do today will be at that same link. So you will not need to move anything on your screen. You'll not need to go to a different connection. You'll not need to go to a different website. You just stay on that URL. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can stay right there to answer that question. We will come back to this question in just a moment. So lock in your answers, get them where they need to be, and we'll see if you happen to know what this is. We will address that in just a moment. Now, for those of you that have been here before, you're probably familiar with where you can find us online. If you are watching our videos, of course, every single one of our training videos is available on our website and on our YouTube channel. We would love it if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, which, as many of you saw in December, passed 1 million subscribers. So let me thank you in this new year for all of your support that you've given this channel. It really has made a dramatic difference, not only to the things that we're able to do on this side, but hopefully it's made a dramatic difference for those watching the videos as well. So feel free to subscribe to that channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have our daily A+ pop quiz questions. I write a new question every business day. You'll find it at professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram, and you can also go to the links that we happen to have on our website to receive that in your email. So there's plenty of ways that you could work through all of those. So we'd love for you to join us online. And of course, we have other places online. You'll hear about those as we go through the live stream today. If you already have your A+ certification, you might be watching this video to earn some continuing education units. Now, if you don't have a certification, then you probably have not heard this term before, and that's okay. This won't apply to you. But for those of you that already have your certification, it's a good place to go, professormesser.com. And we have on this particular CEU, Continuing Education Unit link, I will be giving you instructions sometime during this first hour. So listen in during the first hour, and I will give you the information you need to be able to answer that question. Now, we have these exams that are the current version of the A+. In fact, it's the only version of the A+ available to you. You have the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. These were released in April the 20th of 2022. And we expect that this version of the A+ exams will retire somewhere around October of 2025. That's this year. So you've got about 9 months, probably even a little bit more, before you even have to think about this particular exam version going away. That is plenty of time to study for your exams, earn your A+ certification, lock it in. You've got plenty of study materials right now that are readily available. So this is a very good version to continue studying. So as we sit here in January of 2025, you are in the right place studying the right version of this exam. The exam itself is an exam that is 90 minutes in length. You'll also notice that there are different scores depending on which exam you take. The first exam, or Core 1 exam, is the 220-1101. You need to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. The 1102 exam is a 700. You have to do a little bit better on that one to earn your A+, or to pass that exam. You have to pass both of these exams to actually earn your A+ certification. And once you earn the A+, your exam or your certification that you have earned by passing these exams is good for 3 years. So some of you were even mentioning that CompTIA has hinted that perhaps a new version of exams might be released sometime this year. And because of that, you may be thinking, well, do I want to take this version? Yes, you absolutely do, because it's the only version available. And once you pass the 2 exams, you're certified for 3 years. I like to tell people, once you've got the exam and you're done, you can go ahead and not worry about what they do with the exam versions. You're already certified. And in most cases, many people that are working on their certifications will constantly find and work through the challenges associated with this version of the exam. Don't worry, you will be fine with the version of the exam you pass. This is the one that you would like to do. The 2 exams themselves are the 1101 and 1102. Today, we're going to do questions from the 1101. This deals with mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and we've got hardware and network troubleshooting. So I'm going to go through questions, hopefully in each one of those different areas. Maybe that's something that you are familiar with. Let's see how well you do with the questions that we do today. Also let you know that this is available for you to watch online at any time once we're done. Once I hit the stop button, it is going to automatically post this to YouTube. And that makes it very easy for a replay. But if you are in a car, or you are working through, maybe you're working out, maybe you can't watch a screen for some reason, and you would like to listen to the study group, we have a version that we distribute in podcast format. You can find that podcast format at professormesser.com/podcast, and just simply use your podcast listening program. If you prefer listening on a streaming media service such as Spotify, just search for Professor Messer and you will find it on Spotify as well. Also let you know that this study group will have a YouTube video description on it. You'll see the one that's there right now. And one of the things that I like is that you're able to find things easily by going to the YouTube video description. This doesn't happen automatically. My marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this replay, hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She's also watching the replay chat go by as we do this. She adds timestamps onto every YouTube video that we do for our study groups. So these timestamps will help you find exactly where the questions, the answers, and other important information might be during this live stream. So feel free to have a look at those. This is something that can really, really help you out if you are trying to find information, and you can go back years on our study groups to find that info. We also have a real-time chat available. That's where I will be after we're done here. If you'd like to join us, we're on Discord. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. We got a great community of folks there that are taking their exams, that may have already passed their exams. You can start ad hoc study sessions that you get to control the room. You can stream your screen. You can talk about videos that you're watching. It's all on our Discord. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. Also, eventually, you will need to take this exam. And you could certainly go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for your exam. But why would you do that if you happen to be in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory? You can get a discounted voucher on our website. Simply go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. They're already discounted. You don't need a special code. You don't need a coupon. You don't have to search the internet to try to find a discount. It's already built in. So that discount is one you can get by simply going to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get a discounted voucher, I also give you a little bit extra. So I have written a little book on the tips and tricks that I have accumulated through the years in taking these CompTIA exams. Things that can help you with the study process itself. I also have things that can help you with the process during the exam. So a little tip and trick on strategies you can use while you are in the exam room. That's included for free. It's something you can't buy separately. It's only available with a voucher purchase or with the purchase of one of our success bundles. So have a look at that. That might help you as well. Let's now move to that question we asked earlier, which was, a user in the marketing department would like to add a hotmail.com address to their mobile device. Which of the following configurations would be the best choice? Would it be iCloud, POP3, Gmail, IMAP, or Outlook.com? We are going to stop the poll right now and see how you did with this particular question. 52% of you say the answer is Outlook.com. 25% of you say you would use IMAP for this as the best choice. We have about 9% apiece with Gmail and POP3, and then about just over 1%, almost 2% say the answer is iCloud. And let's see, a better look might be that one right there. 53% saying Outlook. That's a pretty strong number to be able to have that there. Hopefully, that's given you some ideas of where you could go. But Outlook.com is a very good place to go for this because that's where the folks at Microsoft have put all of their emails. So if you are on Outlook.com and you're authenticating off to the Microsoft 365, Outlook.com, Hotmail.com, or any of the Microsoft email services, you'll simply go out to Outlook.com to be able to do that. So this is one that I think will help people because you don't see the words Hotmail.com right there. Hotmail, of course, coming from the term HTML. It's HTML mail. They called it Hotmail altogether. And they sort of kept the name. I think they would like to be able to migrate everything over. And in fact, if you log into Hotmail.com, it moves you over into Outlook.com automatically. So I think that can help you to be able to work through all of those. Maybe that can also give you a feel for different ideas of where you might want to look at where the best way to connect a mobile device to a certain email service. Make sure you're very familiar with those because those could certainly come up on your exam. So I think you did very well on our replay. I think you probably did better than last month. I don't recall the exact percentage we did on the last month, but I think we did pretty good on this one. Hopefully you are familiar with some of those, that particular question. And if you aren't, now you know that that is a topic you certainly need to know for your exam. So let's now move to some new questions. Some of you have already been working through a lot of the questions that we work on. The question, in fact, this is probably a good time to bring up that if you are working on your exams and you're planning to take these exams, one of the things that you'll need to know is the first handful of questions you get on your exam is the questions dealing with performance-based style of questions. So you may not be familiar with these performance-based questions before. Performance-based questions are questions that are very different than multiple choice. In fact, it's anything but multiple choice. It's questions that might be fill in the blank. They might put you to a command prompt. It might be a matching question. It might be a drag and drop question. Think about taking a bunch of multiple choice questions, stick them into one big question, and you've got performance-based questions. It's exactly what those are. So let's do a performance-based question that I've created for you. This is a bit of a fill-in-the-blank question. So hopefully you can work through the fill-in-the-blank part of this. This is the question that you could work through that asks, which RAID type best describes the following requirements? And I have 6 different scenarios here, 6 different requirements. And I want you to tell me what RAID type fits that particular requirement. The first requirement is enable redundancy with 2 physical drives. What RAID type would that be? The next one is lose 2 drives and maintain data availability. What RAID type would that be? The next one is maximize the amount of available drive space. The fourth one is dedicate 1 drive for parity data. The next is data is unavailable after a single drive failure. And the last one is available storage space is 50% of the total. So all of these are referencing a particular RAID type. And since we have 6 options here, you're probably going to see a couple of duplicates in here. So don't worry if you've selected one RAID type for one question. It could be the same RAID type for a different answer that's in here. So you might have some duplicates in here. That's perfectly normal. That's by design. If you would like to answer this, you can see the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and you can lock in your answer. You don't need, for those in the chat room wondering, you don't need a QR code. You don't need a session ID. You don't need any of that. Just go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and it will take you exactly to where you need to be. It makes it very easy to do, so you don't have to do a lot of moving around and figuring things out. You go to professormesser.com/QA, and that's all you need to be able to find that link. Hopefully you're familiar with the RAID configurations. You know, this pops up not only in the hardware section of the Core 1, that's in domain 3 of the exam. This also pops up in the troubleshooting section, which is domain 5, the troubleshooting for storage devices, obviously, since we're talking about RAID types. And that's another way that you might want to go through and figure out the details. Number of you are submitting your answers now. I'm not looking at the answers. I'm going to go through this link and figure out those pieces. For those of you wondering, yes, I do read the chat. I do have it right in front of me. So as I am sitting here, it's sitting right here. So I'm watching everyone going through and looking at the chat. Also, if you are wondering where this information is coming from, where this video stream is coming from, I send a single stream to YouTube, and then they send the stream to you. So if you're seeing questions about what's going on between all of these, hopefully this is one that that you are now familiar with enough to be able to work through. For those of you wondering, I'm not asking for the same RAID type in all of these. So if you see that some folks in the chat room are going, wait, one of these is different than the other. Yes, they're all very different. They absolutely contradict each other. Make sure that you know each one of these could be a completely different RAID type. So you want to choose the best RAID type for that configuration. That might be a good one. I know there are a few monitors on the screen. I realize that. So we'll have to figure out the details. Now, a number of you are submitting your answers. I want to go through each one of these requirements and see if we can figure out what the best RAID type would be for each one of these. So hopefully you're familiar enough with the RAID types that we can do that. So let's step through them one at a time and see what RAID type you would choose for something like this. Let's start with the one at the very top, which says enable redundancy with 2 physical drives. So we only get 2 drives and we need it to be redundant. What RAID type would best fit that configuration? Well, if you are looking at a mirrored configuration where you would have one drive that holds all of your data and a separate drive that has an exact duplicate of all of that data, you would be running RAID 1. And that is one absolutely that gives you the ability to know what you would choose, to be able to only have 2 drives. One of the nice things about RAID 1 is you can get that redundancy and you only need 2 physical drives to do it. Doesn't work that way on RAID 0. It doesn't work that way on RAID 5. It doesn't work that way on RAID 1 plus 0 or RAID 10 as we call it. So that would be the best RAID type for that particular option. Next on our list is we lose 2 drives, but we still have data. We still are up and running. In fact, people may not even realize that we lost 2 drives. So losing 2 drives means that we are using a RAID type that's able to stay up and running with the loss of 2 separate physical drives. That would be that RAID 10. You often see it as RAID 1 plus 0. That is the RAID type that best describes that particular requirement. Next on our list is a RAID type that asks you to maximize the amount of available drive space. We want a RAID type that gives us the most possible storage space. And although the R in RAID is specifying redundancy, that is a redundant array of independent or inexpensive disks, depending on when you came into this particular system, that maximizing drive space is actually doesn't really have an R on it, does it? There's no redundancy if we're maximizing drive space. But if you wanted the most amount of drive space, you'd be using RAID 0, which is indeed 0 redundancy. So that's your trade-off. You have a lot of drive space available, but if you lose any of those drives, you also lose all of the data. You will have to restore from a backup. Next on our list is dedicate 1 drive for parity data. Of the 4 RAID types that we need to know for our exam, which are RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 1 plus 0, which one would fit dedicating a single drive for parity data? Well, that would be RAID 5. RAID 5 is one that takes all of the drives you're using and then dedicates a single drive for parity. That way, if you lose a drive in that particular array, you can rebuild it based on the parity, and you've still got a large amount of storage space, a relatively large amount of storage space to work through all of this. Next on our list is data is unavailable after a single drive failure. Well, I've already given this one away. If you were listening earlier, there is a RAID type that if you lose a drive, you lose everything. You lose all of the data if you lose that single drive. And indeed, that is also RAID 0. That is one that gives you plenty of drive space, but no redundancy if you happen to lose a physical drive. And then we have available storage space is 50% of the total. So 50% being available means that we're taking an existing set of drives and we're effectively duplicating that set of drives in order to be able to do that. The available storage space, 50% of the total, matches the RAID 1 configuration. So there is the different RAID types that you need to know for your exam. Enabling redundancy with 2 physical drives would be RAID 1. Losing 2 drives and maintaining data availability is RAID 1 plus 0. Maximizing the amount of available drive space would be RAID 0, although it provides no redundancy. Dedicating 1 drive or the space of 1 drive for parity data would be RAID 5. Data being unavailable after a single drive failure is RAID 0. And available storage space, 50% of the total, is RAID 1. Now, if you haven't worked with RAID, you haven't gone through the RAID videos that we have in our training class, or you haven't looked at the RAID section in Domain 3 on the exam, I would recommend you go through and look at those very carefully. We need to know the differences between all of those and make sure you understand where different RAID types might be used. Might be something that's important that could come up on your exam. That's our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you some insight into this particular style of question. And if you notice, this is sort of like having 6 different multiple choice questions all combined into one. So don't worry so much about the style of questions for performance-based questions. If you know the content, you will easily be able to answer the question regardless of how they pose it to you. Let's now switch gears back to multiple choice questions, something I think that we are all familiar with. This next question on our list asks, a company's monthly cloud service fees are significantly different each month. Which of the following would explain these differences? Would that explanation be related to high availability, software as a service, metered services, outdated TPM, or internal cloud resources? Now, if you think you know the answer, as always, please, no answers in the chat room. You want to follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. So a company's cloud service fees are significantly different each month. Which of the following would explain these differences? Is it high availability, software as a service, metered services, outdated TPM, or internal cloud resources? This is where you need to lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA, that link that's on your screen, and lock in your answer. Hopefully, that gives you some things to think about. I think a number of us that have worked with cloud services might be familiar with this one. I know I am, because this is exactly the style of cloud service I use for a number of services that we provide on our website, which means that you do have to know where the costs are associated with when you're working in the cloud. It can sometimes be a bit of a surprise at the end of the month when you notice the prices are a little different than what you were expecting. They can change from month to month. In fact, most cloud services, I think, will provide you with some way to monitor as you go, to give you alerts and alarms so that you can tell when you hit certain thresholds. It's just very common to be able to work through those. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a company's monthly cloud service fees are significantly different each month. Which of the following would explain these differences? Would it be high availability, software as a service, metered services, outdated TPM, or internal cloud resources? Let's close the poll and see if you know what the differences are. Metered services, 83% of you chose that one. That's a pretty strong one to be able to work through for the metered services. But is it the right answer? We'll find out in a moment. 8% of you say it's software as a service. 4% of you say internal cloud resources. 3% say high availability. And then you've got almost 0%, just above that, saying an outdated TPM. So nobody kind of bit on the TPM side of things. So the question is, what would we use to explain these service fees? Well, there's a number of characteristics that you need to be aware of when you're working with this system of cloud-based services. You have things like rapid elasticity, where you can scale up and scale down. We just went through a holiday season, so I imagine a lot of retailers were scaling up with rapid elasticity to handle the load. And now that we are in January, they're probably using that same rapid elasticity to scale back down again. So that's one of the great benefits of having a cloud-based service. High availability, we mentioned that as one of the questions, which means the systems are always available. And although this might add additional cost, it's not one that varies in cost every month. Certainly not what you would expect. And of course, we have file synchronization. I don't think that was one of the answers we chose here. But if we look at the answers that were available, we know that we had high availability, so that's not the one we were choosing. Software as a service describes a style of application or style of cloud deployment, and that's not what we would have. It certainly wouldn't explain differences in fees. Outdated TPM, we're not dealing with a trusted platform module, so that's not the issue. And then internal cloud resources, anything that's internal is not something we're paying a third party on. So if you were able to get rid of the four that it is not, it would easily take you to the answer that it is, and 83% of you did choose that one. And metered services is exactly where you would go to be able to find that. Hopefully, this gives you some ideas of how you might want to roll out cloud services, because you could get a variable amount of charges every month. Make sure you are familiar with this process, and metered services is one that is an important consideration. You might want to check and see, do you pay different amounts every month because you're paying for different metered services? The number of bytes in, the number of bytes out, the amount of storage that you're using. These are all very common measurements that would be used to bill you at the end of the month. And in fact, the Professor Messer website is one that does use metered services on my cloud servers. So every month I get a little bit different in the amount that I have to pay my cloud provider based on how many people are coming to my website. And I would love to be in a situation where I'm having to pay so much more because I get so many more people coming to the website. So I guess I can cross my fingers on that one. Sometimes we would like to pay a little bit more. We'd be fine with that type of problem. You did a great job on that one. If you chose metered services, you got it absolutely correct. That is the right answer, and 83% of you did choose that one. Let's do another question. Next on our list is a printer question. You guys like troubleshooting printers, don't you? This next question asks, all of the pages coming out of a laser printer are smudging when touched. Which of the following printing steps is at fault? Is it cleaning, processing, fusing, transferring, or charging? Which one could this possibly be? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. We can lock this in and see if you know what the answer happens to be. Now, for those of you that have worked with laser printers before, you're probably familiar with this one. This is not an uncommon issue, but it's one you do need to know about. And it certainly is part of that laser printing process. You'll need to know where the problems are to be able to troubleshoot and correct the issue. So this would be good. Now, there are lots of printer questions on the exam. Well, I shouldn't say lots of printer questions, but certainly questions that could come across a lot of different types of printer styles. So you've got laser printers, inkjet printers, impact or dot matrix printers. You've got 3D printers. You've got a lot of different thermal printers are on there. A lot of different printer types are there we need to know about. So make sure you're familiar with all of those to be able to have that there. I think for those of you working with printers, you know that this can be a challenge to figure out where the problems are there, especially laser printers. This one talks about pages coming out of a laser printer. Laser printers are complex mechanical devices. You really do need to have an understanding of where your laser printer is working and how it is working to be able to troubleshoot some of these things. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, all of the pages coming out of a laser printer are smudging when touched. Which of the following printing steps is at fault? Is it cleaning, processing, fusing, transferring, or charging? Let's see what you chose. We are going to stop our poll, and we can see that 72% of you think the answer is fusing. But we also have 17% of you that say the answer is transferring. 6% say it's cleaning, 4% say charging, and 1% say processing. So only 2 of these answers in the double digits, and obviously fusing is a big part of that one. So which one do we need to be concerned with? Well, if our toner is coming out of the printer and it's not stuck to the paper, our toner normally would just be permanently affixed to the paper that's coming out of that laser printer, and it's not sticking to the paper, it's smudging. So we're taking our finger and moving it across the paper, and suddenly we get toner on our hands. Something is not quite right when we work through that and being able to understand what the differences are with these. So we need to figure out why our toner is not sticking. Well, the thing that sticks the toner to the paper is a process of sort of 2 things working together. We have heat, which melts the toner, and then we have pressure, which pushes the toner on the page. The device, the part of that mechanical contraption we call a laser printer, the part of that laser printer and the component within that printer that does that pressure and heat is called the fuser, sort of in the name, if you want to think of it that way. It's fusing the toner from the paper itself and fusing it into the part of the paper that makes it permanently stick. And that's why normally you get the printer paper, the printer output, you can touch the paper immediately and it doesn't have any type of smudging at all. And one of the things you'll notice when that paper comes out, it's a little bit warm. It's a little bit, which is nice right now. We're in this cold snap here in the United States. And so nice to have that warm paper coming out. It's warm because it went through the fuser and it used pressure and heat. That's where that heat comes from. It melted that toner and we're getting the paper now as it's coming out of that fuser. Fortunately, paper is not a very good conductor of heat. It loses that heat pretty quick. And that way we're able to touch the paper as soon as it comes out of the laser printer. So that would be a good thing to use. If you're having a problem with that, just replace the fuser assembly. Many of them are designed to easily come out, maybe a couple of screws, pops out of the printer, you put a new one in, you screw it back in, and now you've got a new printer, a new fuser for that laser printer. Maybe a good way to work through that. So those of you that answered fusing, that was absolutely the right answer. That's what you should be working with. That was the one that's going to give you the information you need to be able to understand why that is smudging when it comes out of your printer. Whenever you're looking through these topics on the A+ exam, one of the things you'll notice is that there are a lot of things that you need to know about. If you look through the exam objectives, you'll notice the exam objectives are huge. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different topics. And if you're ever working through understanding where you need to study, it may be a little bit overwhelming. So I, of course, encourage you to watch all of my A+ videos, but there are a lot of A+ videos, 137 A+ videos. And as much as I would love for you to watch every single one of them, I recognize that not everyone has the time to be able to sit through every single one of those videos. So what I've done is take all of the information that's inside those videos and I put them into one document. This is my course notes. I have course notes not only in a physical version, which you can see up here, but I also have this in a digital version of these course notes. The digital version is one that gives you everything that's in these videos, all of the text, all of the important graphics and images, all of the charts that I create, they are in these course notes. This will tell you everything you need to know to be able to follow along with the videos and be able to recall that information once you are through watching the videos. So if you're trying to think about, wait, what did they go through when we were talking about wireless frequencies? We can go right back to the wireless frequency section and have a look at all of the different spectrums and where the different 802.11 technologies fall in all of those different 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz spectrums. All of this is in my course notes books. You can find that. Not only do we have the digital version that you can download immediately, we do have that physical version, which is identical to the digital version, but it is one that you can carry around with you. And if you purchase the physical version, I, of course, will ship this to you. In the meantime, you get the digital version for free that you can download immediately. This is all on my website. If this is something that might help you, you can have a look. It's at professormesser.com/1101notes, or simply follow the main menu at the top of the screen, and you can find all of our course notes for the Core 1 and the Core 2 exams. Let's now shift gears back to more questions. This next question I have for you asks, I guess I could put that back on the screen. A tablet includes an option for an OLED display. Which of the following would best describe this option? What does that mean? That it is compatible with 802.11ax. There is no backlight required. It enables both active and passive stylus functions. It rotates based on the tablet orientation, or it has a poor color representation. Those are 5 different types, characteristics, if you will, and you need to know the one that fits this particular question. The question again asks, a tablet includes an option for an OLED display. Which of the following would best describe this option? Compatible with 802.11ax, no backlight required, enables both active and passive stylus functions, rotates based on the tablet orientation, or poor color representation. If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. You want to follow the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We're seeing more and more devices these days, both portable and more on the larger screen size using OLED technology. So it might be pretty good to be familiar with what those differences are between OLED displays and non-OLED displays. We'll keep it very generic for the questions that we are doing here. Hopefully, you're familiar enough with those to be able to answer this particular question. Let's see how well you did with this one. The question asks, a tablet includes an option for an OLED display. Which of the following would best describe this option? Is it compatible with 802.11ax? No backlight required, enables both active and passive stylus functions, rotates based on the tablet orientation, or has a poor color representation. we will stop our poll and see how you did with this one. And you can see that 72% of you say the answer is that no backlight is required. However, 19% of you say that it is compatible with 802.11ax. And then we have single digits for the rest. 6% say enables both active and passive stylus functions. 2% say poor color representation. And 1% say rotates based on the tablet orientation. Well, that's quite a few to go through. If you're someone working through all of the details of this, no backlight required, though, got a lot of the answers in that one. If you're not familiar with the OLED technology, the OLED technology is one that is the organic light emitting diode. So you add a little bit of electric current and it makes light. That is what OLED is. And it makes light based on these chemicals that are in the panel display itself. And because of that, you're able to get very thin displays and very light displays, because the light that is created is not coming from a separate light source. There's no backlight in an OLED display. Now, I realize the LED technology that we have these days is getting thinner and thinner, and we're greatly approaching parity between OLED and non-OLED display widths, if you were to look at them. But not having a backlight provides a lot of flexibility. First, there's no backlight to go bad. And because you don't have a backlight, you get a very good color representation, especially the blacks, the darker colors that are inside this OLED are very, very dark because it simply is not turning on those particular pixels. So you get effectively a near perfect black. And if you're someone working with graphics, you're doing some type of desktop publishing, you're working with video editing, having that level of color representation can be very, very useful. And so OLED displays are not only used in the desktop platforms, but you can also have them in your smartwatches, on your phones, on your tablets. We're seeing more and more OLED technology get displayed and deployed in the devices that we are using these days. And so the 72% of you that said no backlight, you're absolutely right. OLED doesn't have a backlight. It is certainly it's a bit more expensive than the traditional LED technology, but having that color representation is so important in certain scenarios that maybe OLED is really the only choice you have. Having an OLED display really has nothing to do with wireless technologies. It may or may not be compatible with 802.11ax, but that isn't part of the display. That's part of the technology built into the display, whether it's OLED or anything else. Enabling both active and passive stylus functions aren't associated with an OLED display either, although you may see that functionality in both OLED and non-OLED devices. Rotating based on the tablet orientation, that's just a normal tablet, isn't it? Has nothing to do with the style of or the type of display that's being used in that tablet. And lastly, we have poor color representation. As we've already mentioned, OLEDs have very, very good color representation, so this would not be the answer that we were looking for. The one we wanted was the one up here, no backlight required. 72% of you got that one absolutely correct. That's what we were looking to find, was no backlight required. That is an important consideration for OLED displays. Let's do another question. Let's see how we do with the networking question. This next question on our list asks, a company's DHCP server has failed. Which of the following would be the expected IP address on new devices? Not sure why I do this to myself with these questions. Now I have to tell you different IP addresses. So they are, here we go. They are 169.255.122.7, 169.254.71.14, 165.254.24.230, 169.253.1.177, or 0.0.0.0. This is a whole set of different questions we need to ask. If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. And as always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. A company's DHCP server has failed. Which of the following would be the expected IP address on new devices? Would it be 169.255.122.7, 169.254.71.14, 165.254.24.230, 169.253.1.177, or 0.0.0.0. If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Maybe it's just random. Maybe that's what it is. It sure seems like randomization. We look at all the numbers I'm throwing up on the screen. Let's see if you're familiar with what the answer might be for this one. This is a pretty good question that applies back to the topics you really need to know for the exam. So make sure you're familiar with these topics. And when we go through them, I think they'll make a little more sense as we break down what these happen to be. Hopefully you are familiar with what these might be. And if you've ever had a DHCP server fail, you might be very, very, very familiar with this. So hopefully this can give you a perspective of where you might want to start your troubleshooting task. In fact, it's good to know this because if you see the right number, then this is going to be the one you're going to want to focus on. See how you do with something like this. Hopefully this is one that you're very familiar with. I think that many of us should be. And from the perspective of the exam objectives, they want you to be familiar with this topic. So make sure you're familiar with them. Let's see how we did. A number of you putting in, I noticed the answers are going in a little bit slower this time. So we're trying to sift through all of these numbers that I put up on the screen and figure out what the right answer might be. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a company's DHCP server has failed. Which of the following would be the expected IP address on new devices? Is it 169.255.122.7, 169.254.71.14, 165.254.24.230, 169.253.1.177, or 0.0.0.0. Let's see what you chose. We'll stop our poll and we'll see that the results are 45% of you say the answer is 0.0.0.0. We've got 31% that say the answer is 169.254.71.14. We have 12% that say that the answer is 169.255.122.7. We also have 6% that say 165.254.24.230. And another 6% say the answer is 169.253.1.177. I even knew when I was writing this question that I will be saying a lot of IP addresses whenever we get to this point. So I think this was I knew exactly what I was going to get into with this one. One of the interesting parts of this, though, we didn't really get a majority on this one, did we? We did not get over 50%. So the real question is, what is the answer? The DHCP servers failed. Well, one of the things that you will get if you have a failure of a DHCP server is that your computer will try to make up its own IP address so that you could at least communicate to devices that are on your local network. And in that scenario, we refer to that as a link local address. Link local is what we refer to that. So you can't communicate outside of your local network, but you can certainly communicate to other devices that are on your local network. This can be very useful for troubleshooting, not only to recognize that that is a link local address, but it's also useful to know why were you assigned a link local address and not a DHCP server address. One of the ways that you're able to recognize that you have been automatically assigned an APIPA address or automatic private IP address in IP version 4 is that there is a range of addresses that have been reserved for that particular use. Functionally, that address range is 169.254.1.0 through 169.254.254.255. Now, the entire range is actually a little bit larger, but the first and last block of 256 addresses are reserved. You'll never be assigned those. You can, of course, memorize the entire range if you would like, because that does absolutely give you the option to do that, but you'll only be assigned the ones that are within this range, 169.254.1.0 through 169.254.254.255. Now, the question then, if that's the range, what is the range that we came up with? It seems like anything starting with the 169.254 are in this range. And that would be a very quick way to remember this. So which of our answers started with 169.254? Well, it's not the top one. That's 169.255. It's not the third one. It's 165.254. And then we have 169.253. We got so close on this one. The only one of these that really matches the range that we saw of 169.254 is the second one in our list, which is 169.254.71.14. That is a perfectly legitimate, a normal API-PA assigned address that your particular device has assigned to itself. 169.254.71.14. Now, the plurality of you, not a majority, but the most of you, 45%, chose 0.0.0.0. One of the things that's nice about API-PA is we at least have an address that we could use on our local network. If we were assigned 0.0.0.0, you're not communicating anywhere. It's not a valid IP address that we can use for communication across the network. 0.0.0.0 is often referenced in a default route. And certainly when you get into the Network Plus, the CCNA, and other network-related certifications, you will be learning about default routes and how 0.0.0.0 is a very important IP address. But for the purposes of being assigned an IP address for a device when a DHCP server goes down, you should automatically be thinking, oh, I'll get an API-PA address. It'll create one automatically on my machine. But what is that range? And you should know the range starts with 169.254. So if you answered 169.254.71.14, 31% of you got that one absolutely correct. Now, if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, which means you've already earned a certification and you're looking to collect credits that you could use to renew that certification, I would be glad to send you an email that certifies that you were here to watch this 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that particular email, and you can of course send this email whether you're looking for CEU or not, I'll reply to any of them. What you want to do though is follow these instructions. You must follow these instructions to earn the CEU. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address. In the subject line, please put January 2025 Core 1 or something close to that so I know which one of these videos this came from. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, API-PA 169.254. That's your super secret code words of the month right there. Again, the process you want to use is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, and in that Contact Us form, put your name, your email address, in the subject line, put January 2025 Core 1, and in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, API-PA 169.254. Now, I will receive these messages. I'll get a bunch of them today, and they'll trickle in throughout the week. Usually by the end of the week or so, I am sending those messages out. They will have a digital signature attached to them. So you'll see an attachment, and you'll look at the attachment, and you'll think, that's not even text. What's he thinking? That's because it's a digital signature, which means that none of you can change the content of that particular email when you're planning to submit it, because there's a digital signature that ensures that someone can verify the contents of that particular message. So hopefully that gives you something to think about when you're working through troubleshooting and breaking down the different IP address configurations. We have to know public IP addresses, private IP addresses, different classes of addresses when you get into the world of networking anyway, and the Network Plus and others. And then you have to know API-PA addresses as well. So there's quite a few different addresses we need to work through. Hopefully that's given you something to think about as you work through the details of this. We'll do a time check here. I think we've got time for another question, don't we? We could fit another one into this mix. Next on our list is this question that asks, when powering on, a desktop computer requires a password before the operating system will start. Which of the following would be the best way to clear this prompt? Would it be to remove the motherboard battery, reinstall the OS, replace the storage drive, short a jumper, or restart while holding down the Shift key? Got a few options there. The question again asks, when powering on, a desktop computer requires a password before the operating system will start. Which of the following would be the best way to clear this prompt? Would we remove the motherboard battery, reinstall the operating system, replace the storage drive, short a jumper, or restart while holding down the Shift key? Now, if you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. A lot of people locking in their answers very quickly on this one. I think this is one maybe a number of us have done before. We've worked through this particular problem and figuring out how to resolve this issue, or just to find a way to get into a system. If you're troubleshooting two systems and you suddenly turn it on, it requires a password before the operating system will start. You're at a bit of a stopping point. You now need to figure out how to get past this point to troubleshoot that particular system. So I want to give you some of the answers here. Not, a lot of people have already locked theirs in, so we're just going to go through with this one and see how you did with this one. The question again asks, when powering on, a desktop computer requires a password before the operating system will start. Which of the following would be the best way to clear this prompt? Would it be to remove the motherboard battery, reinstall the OS, replace the storage drive, short a jumper, or restart while holding down the Shift key? And let's see how we did with this one. 60% of you, a good number of you, say short a jumper. That doesn't even sound like a sentence, but it is. That's a real thing. Shorting a jumper, not a basketball reference. Although if I'm playing basketball, it's very much a basketball reference. 18% of you say remove the motherboard battery. 13% of you say restart while holding down the Shift key. So we've got 3 of these answers in double digits right here. So hopefully that's given you some idea of where you could go. Now, 7% of you said just reinstall the OS. That'll fix it. And then 2% of you say swap out the storage drive. That'll get you around it. That'll be the issue that we're working through. So this is a bit of a challenge. You have effectively got a system that has a boot password on it. When you start the computer up, before it even starts the operating system, there's a password. Well, that's a bit of a challenge. How do you even get past that point? And where did this password come from? The password itself is a boot password, an operating system password that has been installed into the BIOS of this system. That's your basic input-output system. So whenever you start trying to figure out how can I clear this, this becomes an issue. So when you're working through the details of this and trying to figure out the specifics of it, now you need to work through resolving this issue. Now, the problem is you have to find where the password is located. You won't be able to see the password, so you can't just simply see what the password is and then use it to bypass the prompt. You need to completely remove that password prompt so that it doesn't even ask you. But that password prompt and the configuration for that password prompt in the BIOS is stored somewhere in your system. Now, the type of memory that is storing that is flash memory. That's what we're using these days, is flash memory on these systems to store all of our BIOS configuration settings. So whenever you're configuring your BIOS to say, boot from this drive, set this time and date, configure these settings, change this storage drive to a different type, change this configuration setting for memory, whenever you save all of that, and put a password in, whenever you put all those configuration settings, your BIOS is going to save it onto flash memory that is on your motherboard. So this isn't like a flash drive that you could just pull out. It's on the motherboard itself. You can't remove it. So you need some way to clear that memory configuration. We need to clear the config of your BIOS config. Now, we're not clearing out the BIOS itself. The BIOS is stored on its own flash memory. In fact, these 2 chips that you see right here contain that firmware of the BIOS. We're not clearing this information. We're actually clearing a flash memory that's probably somewhere else on the motherboard, down here or over here. It's somewhere else. You can probably find it if you look at the block diagram of your motherboard. So we can't really change this. It's also soldered into your motherboard. That is physically attached. We can't remove the BIOS firmware. So how do we remove the configuration in the flash drive? How do we clear the flash drive? Well, on almost every motherboard you're going to find, there will be a set of jumpers on this motherboard that allow you to short the jumpers, which means connect two pieces of those jumpers together, connect two of those wires together, those pins. And when you connect those two pins together, it tells the motherboard, oh, you want to clear out the memory. Let me do that for you. So you'll see jumpers used in a lot of different devices. If you look closely at your motherboard, it'll be some pins sticking up, a lot like this one right here. And in fact, you'll probably want to look at the configuration of your motherboard manual to see where the pins are for shorting or changing the BIOS configuration on your system. Now, this, of course, assumes that you have physical access to this computer. In fact, it's a must-have. For changing the BIOS configuration, you need physical access to this. And then you will want to short this. Notice that this little jumper that we're adding in between these two pins, notice there's a little wire right across the top, a little bit of copper connecting those two. When you push this down, that little piece of copper connects these two to each other. Some people do this very easily just by putting a screwdriver in between those two and starting it up. That's another way to do it. A lot like jump starting a car in that scenario. And when you do that and power on the system and it sees that those two pins are shorted, it says, oh, you must want to remove the configuration for the BIOS. And that's exactly what it does when you shorted those particular pins on the motherboard. Then you can remove that so that it's no longer jumped, restart your system, and you've now cleared out effectively the entire BIOS configuration. Hopefully, you didn't have anything that was too specific in the BIOS. Some motherboards will support just changing the passwords or clearing the passwords. Many motherboards, though, will clear everything in the BIOS, and you have to rebuild the configuration from scratch. Thankfully, I think most BIOS configurations are just the stock configuration. So it probably is not deleting too much that you have to worry about. And that makes it very, very easy now to bypass that first password, start your operating system, and then go through the normal process of booting the OS. So this particular process has nothing to do with the operating system that's installed. You could have Linux on this system. You could have Windows on this system. This is something that is really agnostic when it comes to what operating system happens to be installed, because we're not even at the point yet of starting the operating system. This is just the hardware of your computer at this point. So this is simply changing and removing that password. That is the right answer. Shorting the jumper is what you want to do. 60% of you said that's what you would choose, to short the jumper. 18% said remove the motherboard battery. And although the motherboard batteries, if we were 20 years ago working on our computer, that would be the right answer. That's what we used to do, because all of the configurations of the BIOS had to be battery backup because we didn't have flash memory. Well, I guess we did, but it was so expensive. We certainly weren't putting it on our motherboards. Probably more than 20 years ago now that I think about it, isn't it? Probably closer to 30 years ago. Before we had the UE5 BIOS, really before UE5, we were doing flash memory on our motherboards. So removing the battery now will simply remove the ability for your computer to know what the date and time happens to be. So if you're starting the computer, let's say this is a different question, and it says, when powering on, a desktop computer requires you to put in a time and date. Which of the following would correct this? Replacing the motherboard battery would correct that, because the motherboard battery these days, all it's really doing is maintaining the date and the time on that system, so that when you unplug it, put it in a box, ship it somewhere else, you unpack it on the other side and plug it in, it still knows what the date and time happens to be. It knows that because there's a battery on the motherboard. It's usually one of those CR2032 small little disk batteries. That's what you would be replacing on the motherboard. On our video training, I show you a picture of one of those so you know what those are. But these days, because we are storing the password in flash memory, removing the motherboard battery is not going to help you. All it's going to do is clear out the date and time. 13% said restart while holding down the shift key. That is an interesting trick in Windows. If you do that while Windows is booting, it will not start all the automatic processes, all the automatic startup applications that you have. It will simply just start up Windows without starting all those up. A really useful troubleshooting tool, by the way. Because often, a lot of the problems that you will find are problems with, if you look at my startup menu, I must have 20 different things in my startup menu. Well, holding down the shift key doesn't load any of those 20 different items. So it's a good way to check, is my problem happening because of something that I've done with one of these startup apps, or is it something else? It's a good way to help do that without having to manually go in and disable every single one of them. It's a quick way to do that. We've got 7% said reinstall the OS. The OS isn't even starting yet, so that's not the option. That's not going to help you at all. And then replacing the storage drive, again, we're not even touching the storage drive yet. This is all in the BIOS. So not a storage drive issue either. The only thing that is going to correct this problem is to short the jumper. Since 60% of you chose that one, that is exactly the answer that we were looking for. Hopefully that's the answer you chose, and that's the one that you would want to use if you run into a troubleshooting scenario like this, where you do want to be able to reset the password on the system. You're obviously going to need some type of physical access to the system to be able to do that. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's fit in one more question, though. And that one more question that we're going to do is going to come from a different source. Same rules apply, of course. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. But I want to give you a question that comes from my practice exams book. One of the things I noticed when I was looking around the internet is that a lot of the practice exams that I was finding are not the highest quality. I'm probably being very nice when I say that. They were not really super great when it comes to the quality. I would like to get questions that are very similar to actual exam questions. I would also like questions that apply to the current version of the exam. Folks at CompTIA update these exams every 3 to 3.5 years. There may be items that they remove from the exam and new things they put on the latest exam. A lot of the questions I found online were not taking that into account. So I said there must be a better way to do this, and I think the best way to do it is to write my own questions. So this is a set of questions written that are along the same tone, the same style, and the same complexity as actual exam questions. I think that prepares you a little bit better for the exam. But there's more to it than that. For example, I have questions for you. Let's take a question directly from the practice exams book. I have a book, the practice exams book is right here. So let's step through a question that I happen to have here. The question says, a workstation has been assigned an API-PA address. This is kind of a gimme. I think we did this question though, so I'm going to give you a harder one. Let's do a different one. There we go. There we go. Question A88. This is from my book on page 29. And the question asks, a Windows user would like to temporarily store information from RAM onto their SSD. Which of the following features should be configured? Would that be multi-channel memory, ECC, system protection, or virtual memory? Now, in this book, as I mentioned, I'm on page 29. You can flip over to page 31 if you just wanted to know, is the answer A, B, C, or D? But you might want a more detailed answer for this one. Now, of course, this is a PDF, so if you wanted to do some type of annotation, you could certainly do that. My PDF reader allows me to put different colors in. If I had a stylus, I could write on the screen in different memory. I could change what I'm seeing here. I could highlight different pieces of it. If I think I know what the answer is, I could even mark it on here if I wanted to. The actual answer, though, is on page 126. I'm on page 29. So instead of scrolling through this document, we've all done that in the PDF, I stuck a link right here. Notice my arrow turns into a little hand. If you click on the word the details, it takes you to page 126. And again, there's the question right here. Windows user would like temporary store information. And it tells you the answer is D, virtual memory. So there's the answer we were looking for. And as many practice exams will do, I give you an explanation of why that is considered to be the correct answer. Now, the problem I have when taking these exams is I never get the right answer when I'm answering the question. And I want to know why I didn't get the right answer. Unfortunately, a lot of practice exams I run into don't tell us why the wrong answers are wrong. So in my book, I document every single incorrect answer. So you can go through the answers that were wrong and understand why they were wrong. This completes that education, that learning loop, so that just getting an answer wrong is only half of the learning process. Now I want to correct myself. Now I want to understand more about the technology. This gives you more of that understanding. So for each of the wrong answers, I tell you why. I'll also tell you, by the way, if you are getting the question right, Don't just skip over the incorrect answers. I highly recommend you read through the incorrect answers because the question on your exam might have to do with multi-channel memory, ECC, or system protection. And I give you a little insight into those technologies in this particular set of answers. We might get one of those topics on the actual exam. So don't skip over the wrong answers. There's some really good information in there. Also, if you read this question and you're wondering, what in the world are you talking about? What is this putting memory, SSD, storing information temporarily? What do you mean? And even after getting the answer, you may not really know. The link to the video that describes the technology covered in this question is at the bottom. So in fact, there's a link, again, turns into the little hand. You can click on that, goes over to my website and shows you that video. If you're on a mobile device or you have the physical book, because of course there is a physical version of the practice exams available as well. That physical, it's a thick one. This is a big book. There's a lot of questions in here. You can also use your phone and use that QR code. Takes you right to the video as well. So you've got a few options here. When you're done with this, by the way, this is a PDF, and we jump to this page, which is page 126. To go back to where we were, we use the back button that's in our PDF reader. There we are. Now we're back to where we started, and I can go to the next question that's in our list. Those are my practice exams books. There are 3 separate practice exams in this book. All 3 of these practice exams are 90 questions in length. 5 of those questions in each exam are performance-based questions. So there are 15 performance-based questions in this book. Another good way to help you during those last part of your studies where you've watched the videos, you've read a good book, you've applied what you've learned with some labs and hands-on. Now you're ready to really practice, and Practice Exams book can help you with that. If you want to know more about the practice exams, they're available on my website. Go to professormesser.com/core1pe. You can get Practice Exams book for both the Core 1 and the Core 2 exam. We have a bundle where you can get them combined with the course notes. Maybe something you want to consider. So you get both of those at the same time. Might help you quite a bit. One thing that you might, though, want to get for free, I think your ear may have perked up, are the official exam objectives. The exam objectives tell you everything you need to know on this particular exam. I think I don't have my exam objectives up on my screen. I need to get with the program here. Let me show you what these exam objectives look like. They are valuable tools because they tell you effectively everything you need to know for this exam. This is obviously a fantastic checklist when you're planning to go through the process of studying and finishing up your studies for this exam. The objectives themselves are just a huge list of bullets. Here they are. Section 1.0, mobile devices. Given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware. You have exactly the topics you need to know to take this exam. I get questions all the time where people say, what do I really need to know before walking into this exam? Well, what you really need to know are all of the topics listed in this document. And CompTIA stays so close to this list that if you know everything that is in this document, you're easily going to be able to pass this exam. That's how close they stay. This is also a good sanity check for you if you are looking at third-party training materials and you're thinking, do these training materials really match the expectations that CompTIA has set? You can go back to the official exam objectives and see if those topics really are in this list. If those topics are not in this list, I would highly recommend that you completely ignore them. Stick to this list. As I said, if you know everything on this list, you're going to pass that exam. It's really a very simple formula. And I think it's one that a lot of people may not even know about. This also, as I mentioned, absolutely free. It's available on the CompTIA website. I have a link that will take you over there. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives. Also let you know that if you're someone who's working through this set of objectives, that this may be a very good way to work through and understanding the details of what is important and not important for this exam. So this is a great checklist, not only at the beginning of your studies, this is a great checklist at the end of your studies. You can also go to your favorite exam or your favorite search engine, go to professormesser.com/objectives, or simply type into your favorite search engine, CompTIA Exam Objectives. That may be a good way to do it as well. Hopefully that's given you some ideas of things you can work through. We've done an hour of Q&A already, but stick around. We've got another hour where you're going to ask me questions. You can submit those questions at any time using that same link we used before, professormesser.com/QA. But we have another study group already scheduled for next month. For those of you that are working through your A+, we have a Core 2 study group available in 2 days. That's on January the 9th. And we also have our next series of Core 1 and Core 2 study groups already scheduled for February the 4th and February the 6th. Now, sometimes these dates change, so I highly recommend you always check back to our calendar. It's available at professormesser.com/calendar. I also keep an events channel on our Discord. So go out to professormesser.com/Discord. You can certainly find the latest calendar and events list there. Every time I change this, the moment I make a change to the events, they are changed on this calendar and they are changed in our Discord. I do that immediately so that you always know you're looking at the latest information. And of course, stop by in a couple days. We'll do our Core 2 study group. If you like this one, you'll like that one as well. Well, stick around for the after show. I'm going to answer your questions. We sort of turn this around a little bit. Instead of me asking the questions, you get to ask the questions. We'll do that in the after show coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Stay right where you are. We, of course, have our discounted vouchers on our website. If you're in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers. We also have our course notes, our practice exams, and many other study materials that can help you on our website. You can visit professormesser.com/1101success. We also have many different places online. You can find us in many different social media sites. You can find us on Discord, on the organization formerly known as Twitter. I think I do have a professormesser.com/X I created as well, for those of you that like the name change. I think there's at least one of you, right? I think we've also got our YouTube, our Instagram. We've got LinkedIn. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the site you'd like to find us on, and that's where you would be able to find us right there on that particular social media site. That might help you. Well, that ends our first hour. Thanks for sticking through all of the Q&A that we had. We got a lot more coming up in the after show. Stay right where you are. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay. Well, this is for what we are working through in this particular version of this. We should be able to get a lot of good questions here at the beginning of the year. I feel like that I haven't done one of these in a while. So I'm having to figure out all of the different keystrokes, all of the different settings, all of the different configurations I need to do on this side, but we're figuring it out. Okay, important. We give the throat a little bit more ability to speak for our second hour. And now we're in the middle of our after show. I'm going to close this a little bit so that you can see the questions and the answers that we have here. As you may see on the screen right now, if you are at professormesser.com/QA, you will see a link on the screen that says you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating questions during the session, so your contribution, it will not appear immediately. I say here it may not appear immediately. It will not appear immediately. I get to look at the questions on my side. As much as I would like to answer all of your questions that come through, sometimes I get some interesting questions that I'm simply not able to answer on the live stream. Hopefully you're familiar with that. Well, chat room, how'd you do? How do you think the first hour went? Do you think you were able to answer? I think a number of you answered a number of those questions. We had very good responses on that first hour, but now it's a time where I need to answer questions that you are submitting to me. So you've got a few things that you could step through here. Let's start with some of the questions that you were sending. You can submit questions at any time, and you can submit questions anonymously. So if you don't want to put your name on the screen, that's fine too. I have no problem with you submitting an anonymous question. And in fact, I have an anonymous question that I can submit from my good friend Anonymous. It says, "Hello, Messer. I want to run," just sounds funny when you put it that way. "I want to run a Linux VM on my Mac to practice the commands, but I'm unsure if it will function. My Mac's memory is 8 gigabytes, and I have about 38.69, I'm assuming that's gigabytes of storage. Do you have any recommendations? Well, you have probably the bare minimum of memory. I think you probably recognize that on this system, a bare minimum of memory on this machine. But if you want to run a Linux VM, there are a lot of Linux virtual machines out there that are built, or Linux builds, Linux distributions that are built on understanding or starting with a minimum amount of a footprint. Now, in reality, Linux itself is pretty flexible, and it's a very good use of memory management, and it will run in nearly any configuration. So a stock config of practically any Linux build will work just fine. You didn't mention whether the Mac that you had was an Intel platform, the older laptops, or whether it's one of the newer Apple Silicon CPUs. These are important to consider because you'll need to know what type of VM you need to install. Not all VM distributions will work in that ARM or that Apple Silicon type of configuration. But if you have an Intel platform, there are many Linux distributions that work on Intel. These days, we're doing much better with availability for ARM Linux builds, and you can practically find one anywhere. In fact, I installed one for Ubuntu yesterday. I was doing some testing, working through a performance-based question for Thursday. There's a little bit of insight into some of the things we're doing. So I did work through a number of questions that I had for ARM and working through an ARM-based Linux distribution. I think you could probably run it pretty well. Now, obviously, you don't want to be running other things on your Mac at that point. You don't want to have other word processors or browsers or other things running on your system. You just want to run Linux. That's a very minimum config, but certainly 8 gigabytes of memory and about 40 gigabytes of storage, you're doing just fine. You're probably only going to need probably less than a gig on a very basic Linux distribution. But even if you allocated 2 gigabytes of storage for Linux, that's plenty to do all of the testing you need to do. And if you allocated 2 to 3, maybe even 4 gigabytes of memory, you do just fine. Starting up Linux, opening up a command prompt and going through the different commands, probably only need to set it at 2 gigabytes and I think you'd be fine. Play around with the different settings. It will depend on the distribution that you're using. I think you're doing just fine from a resource perspective. And the hypervisor I would recommend you use is one that is available on the macOS platform. You could run VirtualBox. There is a version of VirtualBox that does work on an ARM-based or an Intel Silicon-based platform. I run a couple of different ones that tend to be a commercial platform, although there are free versions of it. For example, VMware has their macOS hypervisor Fusion. That's a very good one to use. And I think they just changed the licensing of Fusion so you can run it for free, which is nice. It did not used to be free for macOS users. So that's very nice to be able to do that. On my macOS device, I run macOS. This is my macOS system in front of me. In fact, the 2 machines that are in front of me and to the right are macOS. This is my video switcher, which is a purpose-built appliance. It's not running an operating system that you have direct access to. I bet it's probably Linux related. And also my streaming device, also from Blackmagic. Both of these are Blackmagic products. That is also a purpose-built appliance. I don't have access to that operating system. There's a MacBook to my right, and I've got an iOS, iPad OS in front of me. So you've got a few different things to be able to use for a hypervisor. For macOS, being able to use the VMware Fusion is very, very good. I use Parallels on mine. Parallels traditionally has had more integration into the Mac OS platform, into the operating system itself. But these days, I think VMware Fusion and Parallels, both of them are pretty good. Both of them have a lot of parity. So I think both of those would be a good choice for you to get up and running. Grab a Linux distribution. You can install it in 10 minutes and you'll be up and running with Linux on your Mac OS device. Let's get Another question that you have, I do these sort of real time here. So I'm going to kind of flip through the questions that we have here. Let's talk about A+, since we are discussing exams. This is a question from Austin. Austin asks, is it wise to take Core 1 and Core 2 exams back to back? Or should I break studying into Core 1, take an exam, then Core 2? How should we do this? This is actually a good question from a strategy perspective, because I've seen people do this different ways, and it goes the way that you would probably expect. Now, if you were to look at the Core 1 exam objectives and you were to look at the Core 2 exam objectives, you were to put them together and sort of look at them sitting next to each other, what you would find is there's very little overlap between those two exams. Did not used to be this way, by the way. Back in the day, you would learn about hardware on the first exam, and then you would troubleshoot that hardware on the second exam. So you had to kind of have the same knowledge that you would apply across exams. Fortunately, CompTIA stopped that. I think probably the 700 series was the time they stopped doing that. They created a very good split, a very obvious split between these two exams. So the information contained in Core 1 tends to be only focused on Core 1. The information you need to learn for Core 2 tends to be only associated with Core 2. There's not a lot of overlap between those two. This makes it so good for studying. In fact, what I highly recommend is you focus on a single exam at a time. Doesn't matter which one you take first, because as I said, they're pretty much self-contained. In fact, many people like to take Core 2 first and then take Core 1. It's really up to you and what your knowledge base happens to be in these topics. Pick one of them and stick with that one. Study, let's say you pick Core 1, study everything about Core 1, go through the exam objectives of Core 1, watch some Core 1 videos, read a Core 1 book, go through Core 1 labs, do some Core 1 Q&A, take the Core 1 exam. Pass the Core 1 exam, and then you can forget all of that if you want to. You won't be able to, but now you don't have to worry about Core 1 anymore. Now you can shift your focus over to Core 2. And now you can go through the Core 2 videos, read a Core 2 book, do some Core 2 labs, work on Core 2 Q&A, and take the Core 2 exam. So I would highly recommend focusing on one single exam at a time. These A+ exams are a lot of different topics, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of objectives. So doing both at the same time really should only be done by someone who's already been in the industry for a very long time and already knows a lot of these topics already. I could not imagine someone who doesn't have any experience with these technologies studying both at the same time, walking into the exam center and taking them both on the same day. Now, there are people that have come to my site who've told me about this experience that they have had where they studied both at the same time. They went to the exam center and took both of those exams on the same day. And more often than not, much more often than not, they are not successful. It's just too much information. It's just too much that you would need to learn to be able to do that. So I would say your best course of action, and in fact, your most efficient, and in fact, probably the easiest way to do this is just one at a time. There's no rush. You don't have to hurry through it. It's not a race. We don't have to worry about getting them done in a certain time frame. Only thing you have to worry about is the retirement date of these exams. And as we already mentioned, the retirement date for the current version of the exams is at the end of 2025. So you have the entire year to work on passing both of those exams. Now, if you don't think you can do it an entire year, maybe you should wait for a new version to come out so it resets the clock to a new 3-year time frame. But I would say that 99.9% of you can easily get through both of these exams in the time that's available for you in 2025. Not going to be a big problem. Now, for those people that did take both at the same time, the one thing they told me, whether they passed or whether they failed, in each instance, they told me that was a really bad idea. That I should not have done that. That was a bad strategy. They thought they could cram it all in, get it all done at the same time. Even the folks that passed told me it was a bad idea, just to give you an idea of just how bad it was for them. So I would recommend the same thing. I would recommend not doing the both at the same time. Focus on a single exam at the time, and I think you'll be just fine. And to bring that up, a good follow-up in the chat room, the question is, do you have to pay again if you fail? Well, most vouchers are a one sitting time voucher. It's a one exam voucher. So if you go into the exam and you fail, you've used your voucher. You've now got to buy another voucher. So yes, in most cases, you do have to pay again if you fail. There are certain vouchers available on the CompTIA website. They're bundled with other training materials. So you're spending $1,000 and they'll give you a voucher that has a retake function. So that if you fail the first time, you have the ability to retake it again, but you're paying for that. They don't really say that part of it. You don't get that for free. That costs money. So just so you're aware of that, nothing is for free, obviously. We want to be able to take the exams. And I think if you studied the exam objectives, you understand what these objectives are, you can explain those objectives to yourself or anyone else, and you've got a good understanding of everything that is listed in the official CompTIA exam objectives. You don't need a replay voucher. You don't need a retake voucher. You don't need a do-over voucher. You can simply get the one voucher, sit for your exam, and you're going to pass your exam. So I think that's probably the most effective way to approach this issue. This is, do the vouchers expire? Yes, they do. Most vouchers are good for a year, and you must take the exam before the voucher expires. Not register the exam. You have to finish taking the exam before the voucher expiration date. So if you were to buy a voucher today, you have to take your exam before this time next year. So that's a lot of time. The vouchers are also not specific to a exam version. So if you have an A+ voucher, it's good towards any available A+ exam as long as it's in that available time frame, as long as it hasn't expired. I think you're fine. That's what you should work through. There are also, for those of you that are in school, there are academic vouchers available at a significant discount. This is only available for students and only students available in the US and the UK. But it's a great discount. And that same voucher page I told you before, professormesser.com/vouchers, at the very top of the page, I tell you, if you are a student, don't buy the voucher from me. Click this link. It's really odd that I think now that I say it out loud, it's kind of a weird thing. Don't buy my voucher. Go get this voucher. Go to the academic store and get that voucher. And I don't have a link to the UK academic store. I need to put that on that page. Lori's watching this. Lori, could you remind me to put a link to the UK store, the academic store as well for those? I think that would be useful for everyone. So along those same lines, I told you there are no version numbers for the vouchers. So if you have a voucher for Network Plus, it is good for any Network Plus exam. There is no such thing as an N10008 Network Plus voucher and an N10009 Network Plus voucher. Those don't exist. There is simply a Network Plus voucher. So if you bought a voucher a year ago when the N10008 exam was around, and now the 008 exam is retired, the voucher's still good. You can still use it for Network Plus. So that part's good. That you don't lose any money there. They try to make it a little bit easier on you so that it fits into your schedule. Sometimes you don't know when you're going to be taking these exams, but at least you have a time frame and you can always work through and figure out the details for that. Okay, let's see if we can get more questions that you have. A lot of questions. Thank you, by the way, for submitting the questions. There are a lot of questions in here and working through these details. Here is a lot of what we've been talking about today has been about my free A+ course and places that you can go to get A+ type training on the internet. But this is a question that is not on the internet. Randy asks, my local community college has a continuing education course for IT. It's a 6-month course covering A+, Security+, and Network+. Do you think most employers would see that as better than doing self-study? I don't think employers really care how you came to earn your certification. I don't think really they care so much. They're more focused on, are you certified or not? Do you have your A+ certification? Do you have your Network Plus certification? Do you have your Security Plus certification? They're asking in their job description, do you have that credential? And I don't think they really care how you got the credential, because when you earn the credential, you're telling that employer, I have a base set of knowledge that I have earned and can guarantee by showing you that I have passed this particular credential. So I don't think that the employers care, but I think this is a good opportunity. And a lot of community colleges in the US do this, by the way. They have these courses either in continuing education, which are nighttime, so they're great to go to if you have a day job, and they cover A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, sometimes CCNA and other certifications as well. It's a good opportunity to be in a classroom environment, to have an instructor who knows the content, and to be able to network with the other technologists that are in the room. So you can ask questions of each other. You could say, but what about this? And I hear what you're saying about the battery on the motherboard. What's that battery look like? Well, let's rip apart a system. Let's find the battery. Let's take out the battery. Let's look at the battery. Let's replace the battery. There are things you can do in a classroom environment that are a lot different and perhaps even more flexible than going through other learning processes, which is why classroom knowledge is useful. So if you think a classroom scenario would work for you, if you think that is a good way to go through the process of learning this content and you think it might help you, I highly encourage you to do that. I think that would be a good opportunity. Doesn't mean you can't use the videos online or read a good book or go through some separate labs or do some separate Q&A. Just another way that you can add to the different processes required to learn all of this. Because I think we would all agree, sitting in a classroom gives you a different way of learning than if you are reading a book. Reading a book is a different way of learning than watching videos. Watching videos is a different way of learning than doing hands-on labs. But you need all of these to be able to give yourself the best possible chance of passing this exam, because all of these teach you in different ways. We refer to this on our website as a WRAP formula, W-R-A-P. You need to watch videos. You want to read a book. You need to apply this with hands-on labs. You need to do practice exams, W-R-A-P. It's a good way to think about the learning process and what would give you the best possible outcome when you step into that testing center. And of course, on our website, a lot of these components we just talked about are free. Some of them I have available as separate products. Find the ones in the combination that works for you. Not everybody needs all of those, but you might need one or two of them. You get to decide how that works best for you. So I say if you've got an opportunity to take this course in a community college and you think a classroom environment fits your style of learning the best, absolutely do that. It's probably got a good price too. I think there's a lot of the pricing for these courses for a community college are priced very well. Certainly better than going to a separate, perhaps third-party or non-academic type environment. So good choice there if you want to work through those types. Let's do some more questions. How are we on time, by the way? Doing very good on time. Let's do some more. Let's talk about this. A lot of people are sort of, and sometimes asking questions about when you get these certs, how could you get a job with these certs? And by themselves, of course, the job is the credential that you're earning with the certification is one of the things you can use to apply towards that position. But Carolina asks, Professor Messer, do I need clearance to work in the IT field? And the answer is perhaps. You might. The answer is also you might not. In my career in IT, I've been in IT and working in these environments in basically the private sector. So I've worked for value-added resellers, computer resellers. I've worked for insurance companies. I've worked for organizations that make IT technologies such as protocol analyzers. I've worked for companies that do network management. I've worked for cybersecurity companies. So I've sort of been in that private sector of IT for a very long time. The private sector really doesn't require any type of security clearances. A security clearance is really more of a governmental requirement, generally focused around the federal government in the United States. Other state or country federal type governments probably have a similar requirement for their IT and their security folks. There's a certain clearance you have to have. The clearance is one that it's more of a security check on you. They want to know, are you trustworthy? Are there any problems in your past we need to know about? Have you stolen anything? Because you're going to have access to some very sensitive data, and they don't want that data disappearing or being misused. They want to know what other people think of you. Do other people consider you to be a good risk in this particular job? And what type of things are you going to do once you get into this role? Are you easily swayed by a third party? And in the world of government and in the world of IT data in a governmental environment, there may be very, very sensitive data, especially if you work in an area relating to the national defense. You don't want that information getting out to someone else. So they're going to do some checks on you. And once they finish those checks, they think that you are a good fit, they think you are a good risk, they will provide you with a security clearance. And there's different levels of security clearance, and they will pick one that fits best for the role that you are in. And you can even move up with those security clearances as you gain experience with that particular organization. The higher your security clearance, the more risky environments you are allowed to work in, very broadly stated. Those are things you should always think about, but not necessarily to work just in IT. In my career in IT, where I worked for all those different companies, I never had a security clearance. None of those organizations asked for a security clearance. Some organizations that are in the private sector still require a security clearance, especially if they are a private company that does business with the federal government. So just by being a private sector company doesn't necessarily limit them from asking for that security clearance. The government, though, doesn't just hand out these security clearances. There is a significant process. There's often a cost associated with this. And when you get your first job in IT that deals with a company that is working with the federal government that requires this security clearance, they will often sponsor you. And if it is a company that is offering you to be sponsored by them to get this security clearance, that's a pretty good deal. You should definitely consider that if you are in an area where you have a lot of federal jobs. So in the United States, if you are in the Washington, D.C. area, you're in Virginia, you're in Maryland, you're in that federal area, a lot of the IT jobs may require security clearance, and they may require you to really have a good understanding of what different jobs require the different clearances in your area. And even more importantly, once you get that security clearance, now you're able to move to different jobs in that same geographical area that ask for the same clearances. So the clearance sticks with you. So when you leave, you're the one who is now cleared, not the company that you worked for. So there's some interesting parts of this that are very important, but make sure you are very familiar with the requirements for that job, what the clearances are, what the process is. Sometimes that clearance works out, sometimes it doesn't. You have to be prepared for any of those contingencies, but not a requirement. And like I said, I never got a clearance. I didn't do a lot of work in the federal government. Most of the work that I did was with companies that are private sector. So a lot of the very large companies in the world that you've probably heard of, big banks, large retailers. So if you go to a mall, if you go to any of the large retailers in your area, I've probably been in their data center or certainly talked to their security professionals because we did a lot of work with them. And we talked a lot with them about security of credit cards, security of network, security of the data. But I didn't need a security clearance to do that. I just needed pure experience in the field that I could then bring to the table. And in our world of IT, you can tell pretty quick when you sit down at a table with someone how much they might know or not know about a particular topic. Some meetings, I knew a lot about the topic. Some meetings, maybe I didn't know as much, but in those cases, I brought in somebody who did. And you learn in those environments. You learn during those experiences, and you continue to grow. That's one thing that is universal in IT, is you never stop learning. You are always gaining more knowledge. You are always taking new technologies and learning about them. Sometimes you're taking old technologies and learning about them. It's something that is just a common everyday part of your life in IT. You will never stop that learning process. It will always be continuing for the duration of your career. If you're not learning, then you're not doing something right in IT, and you're getting left behind. Nobody wants that either. IT is one of these interesting fields where the more you learn and the more you apply yourself, the more valuable you will be. It doesn't always work that way in every single job that you would find. In the transportation sector, in medicine, in legal, it's not always that way. But in IT, it's always worked that way, because the knowledge is what we have. The knowledge is what makes you valuable as someone working in that organization. So the more knowledge you have, the more flexibility you will have, because people want that knowledge. And if you can find the right niche at the right time with the right company, it is a perfect symphony. It really is remarkable. That has only happened to me maybe once in my career with a company, and it was really one of the best jobs I ever had. Was one that I hit that job right at the right time with the right technologies. I had the right experience in my pocket, but you don't get to that opportunity unless you have done all of that work up to that point. It's not like you can figure it out on the fly. So you should constantly be building your foundation. You should constantly be adding to your knowledge base, because you never know when you're going to get that call out of the blue where somebody says, I have this opportunity. It's really perfect for your knowledge base. And it's something you may want to look into. If you didn't have the knowledge, you wouldn't have the opportunity. I say I was lucky. And in many ways, I absolutely was to get that job. But the luck was only there because of the hard work that had occurred prior to that point. You got to add to that luck. You got to push the luck along sometimes. I'll take it however I can get it in that scenario. Let's keep going through the list. If you have a question, there's the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. You can submit that question at any time. We've been now working through this new video switcher, new audio. I mentioned when we were doing this, when we started in the pre-show, that I had all new equipment. So now that we are almost through the second hour, I'm going to hit the chat room and ask you a question. I told you you'd be asking me the questions, but I'm asking you this one question. Is it looking okay? Is it sounding okay? How's things been through this study group? And if you have any specific feedback you would like to give, you're more than welcome to hit the Contact Us link on our website. I'd love to get your feedback. There's things I'm going to tweak. It's a constant motion of me working through this. The switcher that I have is a Blackmagic 4K Constellation 2ME switcher. It's really just a newer version of the switcher. It's just a newer version of the one I was using before. There's some additional capabilities I've been able to take advantage of. It works pretty well. And if you're seeing lag or you're seeing freezes, I hate to say it this way, it's on your side, because mine looks pretty good. One of the things you can't see very well is I have constant monitoring of the stream that I'm sending to YouTube. One of the challenges when working with a third-party streaming service like YouTube is I'm sort of at their mercy. I send them a stream, and then they have to recompile that stream into a format that's best for what you're looking at. And not only does that take time, then they have to send it through the network to get to you. You know, there's 8 to 12 hops just to get to you. Anywhere along that range would be bad. Anywhere along that range would be a problem. You'll see some issues there. In fact, you may want to hit the cog wheel and go to a lower resolution. Maybe that solves the problem for you and being able to work through that. Just because your final mile happens to be really good doesn't mean that something else is going wrong between you and YouTube, which is where the challenge is. So that's good. So thank you for the feedback. Folks in the chat room are saying, looks great, working great. Really, I'm most concerned about the quality of the video, the quality of the audio, and making sure that you're able to focus on the learning part of this without being distracted by the technology behind it. Hopefully we're able to make that happen for you. Let's do some more questions coming in to professormesser.com/QA. Let's see what else we have here. I've got more in this list. Oh, this is, since we talked about this kind of in the study group, this is a quick Q&A that we can answer. This Q&A tends to ask, bring it up. This question asks, okay, for these CEUs, you may have recalled in that first hour, I told you how you can earn a webinar category CEU just by watching this, just by hanging out that first hour. So the question is, for the CEU, is it possible to renew your entire A+ certification by just purely attending web seminars? Oh, we may have found a way around the... No, we didn't. So wouldn't that be nice, though, if you could just hang out with me and we could just talk about technology and we could do some Q&A, and it would be great if we were able to do that. Unfortunately, we are not able to do that. Let me explain why. So if you go to the CompTIA website, there's a continuing education section for this, and they talk about, why do you need to renew? What is this renewal process like? Let's choose a renewal path and let's submit your CEUs and renew. I'm going to choose the renewal path option, and I'm going to choose the option on the screen to renew with multiple activities. This is the one where you collect CEUs, continuing education unit activities. And in this list, they say, well, there's different ways to earn CEUs. You could do certifications. You could do non-CompTIA certs. You could do training in higher education. You could participate in industry events. There's a lot of things you can do. We're going to choose the option for training and higher education. And one of those in here is this big chart that talks about how you can earn CEUs. You don't think they were going to make it easy on us, did they? So they say you need, for the A+, you need 20 CEUs to renew your A+ certification. 20. Now, how many CEUs can you get in a 3-year renewal period by watching or attending a live webinar? 4. We're so close there. It could have been 20. It's not. It's 4. So even after attending 20 of our live streams, you're still only able to submit 4 of them for your renewal. That means you'd have to come up with 16 CEUs somewhere else. Now, some of these are you do one thing and you're done. For example, you need 20 CEUs to renew your A+. If you completed a training course, you get 20 CEUs. Done, finished, nothing else you'd have to do. If you do a live webinar, only 4. If you attend a conference, only 4. If you complete a college course, 20. So there are ways that you could do one thing and you would get a certain number of CEUs and you would be done. But unfortunately, attending my live events, not one of those. Wouldn't that be great? I would love that. I'd just be sending out CEUs all the time. It'd be fantastic. But unfortunately, not the case. Not what we're working through. Let's do some more here. We've got other questions that you have submitted. How are we doing on time? We got good. We're great on time. Let's have a look at what other questions you have here. This is thankfully somebody asking the good questions here. This is one that that hits me right where I am. Are you looking forward to the new video cards coming out from Nvidia? Well, who isn't? Now, as a video person, as someone who has a video studio, and as somebody who just bought a brand new gaming computer. I didn't build my gaming computer this time. I bought a gaming computer stock. I went against my gut, and I did it mostly because, and I think you'll appreciate this because of who you are. I bought a stock gaming computer system this time from a company that I bought from before. So this is not a new thing, but I've got a brand new A+ course we've been working on for months, and we're already shooting this course and we're building out new things for the course that's coming later this year. So, but we have to do all this work now. I just don't have time to build one. It takes a lot of time to build, to spec out. Well, it takes me a lot of time to spec out a gaming system. And if you've never been over to PC Part Picker, why have you not done that? Go to pcpartpicker.com and you can build out from scratch your PC. Just start a build. What's great about PC Part Picker is you can find a motherboard you like, and you pick that motherboard, and then it tells you everything that's compatible with that motherboard, and perhaps more importantly, everything that is not compatible with that motherboard. So you know that the things, that the memory that you're getting, the CPU you're purchasing, everything that you're getting, you know that it's the right one. Now, I don't have any relationship with PC Part Picker. I just like their website. That's one of the things I often use. Didn't use it this time. Just bought one off the shelf. Did not buy it from Dell. Folks in the chat room now want to know, where'd you get it from? Let me work with it first. I just installed it 2 days ago. So I just got it in. It's got a 4090 in it. It's got a nice graphics card. But of course, the instant you buy technology, it's outdated. It's like buying a new car. You roll it off the lot, it's already 20% of its value's gone. So it's almost the same thing for a PC. You buy the PC, it's immediately going to lose value. But that's not why you buy it. You buy it for a particular function. In my case, I buy it for rating. So there's gaming that I want to do on it. In the evening, I like to sit down. I like to have fun online. Just take an hour of my night and do something that is not purely technology related. Something where I'm on the couch, I'm sitting back, and I can just play a game. Just enjoy, relax, have some entertainment. But that's one of those, I think. It is not a Dell, which means therefore it's not Alienware. Once we really get to a point where I've used it for about a month, we'll talk more about what that system is and see if it's something that applies. There's always good parts and bad parts to purchasing a stock system. And so I'm looking forward to finding the problems, and I'm looking forward to finding the things that are really good with it. So that's where that's coming from. But a great question. Am I looking forward to the new video adapters, the new video technologies coming out? I absolutely am. Can I afford the new video cards coming out? Well, that we'll have to see. We shall wait and see on that one. The answer will probably be no, but we'll see. The system I got, though, pretty nice. Liquid cooled, nice and quiet. The fans are nice and quiet. It's a nice system. Nobody's hit on it yet, but there's some good stuff there. We bought a lot of these systems over the years from this company. So we'll see if it works out that way. I have to see if it all is going to be as good as I think it is, but I've got to put it through its paces. I have to really go through the process of understanding if I got something that really is going to do what I want it to do. Let's go through a different set of questions that you have. Okay, well, here's a good point. This is a good one to bring up because I think this has come up a lot. It's the new year. We've just went through a new year. We've changed everything from 2024 to 2025. None of us are writing the right dates on the things that we do. But now the question comes up that we've got these course notebooks. And if you were to look at this course notes book, let's see if I have, we'll go to the first page here. And it tells you that the first edition of this book was written, you can't read it because it's blurry, March of 2022 is when this was published. March of 2022. So 2022 is 2025. How could this be any good? Well, that's because CompTIA doesn't write their exams based on the calendar year. CompTIA writes an exam series, and then that exam series is good for 3 years. So when this came out, I actually published this before the exam was available. So this is absolutely the valid version. You should not be looking at years when it comes to the CompTIA exams. You should always look at the number of the exam. So this one, although it says Core 1, the number you're looking for is this one right after it, 220.1101. That's what you want to look at. That is the important part of the exam. And the current version of the A+ exam, you guessed it, it's the 220.1101 and the 220.1102. So check your study materials. And if it has on there the 220.1101, that's the most recent study materials, and it matches the version of the exam objectives that you will find on your actual exam. That's the important part. Now, there will be, of course, a new series, a new exam will be released sometime this year. It'll be the 220.1201 and the 220.1202. So you always just change it from the 11 series to the 12 series. So this is a good example of where you need to look when it comes to your study materials. If you look at a study material and it says it's a 220-1001, it's a 220-901, it's a 220-801, that's for older exams. Do not use that. Trust me on this one. So much changes between exam versions. They throw out a lot of content. They bring in a bunch of new content, which means there's just enough change that if you study from old materials, you will not have all the knowledge you need to be able to pass this exam. In fact, you'll have too much knowledge of things that are no longer in the exam. So you walk in the exam room and you fail, and you wonder, why did I fail that exam? I knew everything that was in my 220-901 book. You were ready for the exam that it was 6 years ago, 9 years ago. That's not a good place to be. You need to study the latest version. So if you are studying from anything that is marked as the 220-1101, that's the right book. That's the one you want to use for your studies. That's the one that has everything you need. You've got the latest content. You don't have to worry that you're not studying from the right things. So make sure whatever you are studying from matches the version of the exam that you're planning to take. That's it. That's what you need to know. So stick to that. You'll be just fine. Along those same lines, just as a reminder, let's go back to those dates that we have here. For the 220-1101 and the 220-1102, I'll bring up that same slide we had earlier that talks about the exam. Here it is. That's not it. There it is. The 220-1101-1102 was released on April 20th of 2022. We expect it to retire in October of this year, October-November timeframe. We don't know for sure because CompTIA has not told us for sure when that date is. To be fair, CompTIA has not even told us when the new exam will be released yet. I'm not even sure they know for sure yet. I think they're trying to figure that part out, lock those dates down, because those are important dates. We need to know those. So in the past, there have been times when they've given a date and then they've had to change the date. And that creates confusion for people that see their first date, but they don't see the second date. So I think what CompTIA is trying to do is make sure they give you a date that is valid, that is on point. Now, if you go to the CompTIA website now and you bring up certifications and you choose the A+ certification, they will tell you for this one. Let me click on it myself. You've probably seen, let's close this out. Let's click this other thing. Let's see if I can change the screens. Let's get rid of this. Why is I am trying to get there. There we go. So you've probably seen on the CompTIA website, here we are in the CompTIA A+ page. This is why people are asking this, because they say coming spring 2025, spring 2025. They didn't give a date, so we don't know the date yet. The new A+ certification 220-1201, 220-1202 exams, they're updating it to ensure it remains relevant and comprehensive in today's rapidly evolving IT landscape. The new certification will cover essential skills in hardware, software, networking, troubleshooting, increased focus on security, networking, and software troubleshooting. Again, they sort of said the same thing. Preparing individuals for a wide range of IT roles. They're just giving you the heads up that just like normal, every 3.5 years, we update this exam. This is nothing new. We are updating it again at some point. So that is exactly where you would go to figure this out. But even they don't know what date it is yet. They're not even sure. So we don't know. The real question, you're already asking it in the chat room, should you wait? Absolutely not. Never, never, never wait to get certified. Never. Always a bad idea. There's never an upside. There are plenty of downsides for doing this. So I would always tell you, if you are currently, you need these certifications, take the current version, because in fact, that's the only one that is currently available. Do not wait for a newer version of the exam. And I tell you this because we tend to use these certifications as a way to show a prospective employer that we know this information. And in fact, prospective employers may be requiring you to have this certification. Well, if you wait, other people are not. So other people, while you're sitting around wondering, hey, I wonder when CompTIA is going to bring out that spring certification. It might be sometime. I wonder when it's going to be. You still don't know. It's not out yet. Where is it? Where is the cert? I don't know. How about it? We don't know where it is. In the meantime, somebody else is already studying, and most people will have already earned their certification before the new one's even out yet. So while you're sitting here waiting, I'll just wait for some unknown reason. I'll just wait for a new one. Somebody else has earned their cert. They're going to apply to the job that you would like to have, and they're going to get the job because you don't have your cert yet. Why are you waiting? Why are you putting yourself in that position? Never, never, never wait to get certified. Get your certification now. Take the 1101 exam, take the 1102 exam. There is a plethora, a cornucopia, a massive information on the internet for this version of the exam. There are courses already published for this exam. There are books already available for this exam. There are labs available that you could take for this exam. There are practice exams available that you could take for this current version of the exam. There is no better time to take the current version of the exam than right now. It's actually reverse than what you might think. You might think, I'll wait because the new one's new and new is better. No, old is better. Old is much better. Old is so much better. You've got much more of an advantage to take the current version of the exam than waiting for day one. Because here's what happens on day one. I'm speaking as someone who did a course for the 600 series, 700 series, 800 series, 900 series, 1000 series, and 1100 series. So we're working on our 7th version of this exam. On day one, when this exam is released, there will not be a lot of books available on Amazon. There will not be a lot of practice exams available on day one. There will not be a lot of different labs available on day one. There will not be a lot of books and videos or anything else available on day one. It usually takes about 3 to 4 months for these materials to finally trickle out because the publishing process is rather involved. So if you're waiting for this new version of exam and then the first day hits and you're like, okay, let's go get that book I like. Wait, there isn't one. Where's the book I like? Oh, Amazon says it'll be available in 3 more months. Oh, I guess I'll just wait for the book, I guess. Another 3. Now you've waited 6 months. In the meantime, everybody else has their cert, they've got the job, and they're already on their way. This is why I tell you, do not wait. And by the way, if you take the current version of the exams and you pass them and you earn your A+ certification, or you wait 6 months and get that version of the A+ certification, there's actually the same cert. You've actually earned the same thing. There are no versions of certifications. You can kind of check me on that. There's not a 1101, 1102, and a 1201 and a 1202 cert. Those only describe the exam versions. Those describe the questions you're going to get. They do not describe the version of the certification. Certification is just the A+ cert. That's it. There is nothing else relating to this other than that. So I would tell you very strongly, never, never, never wait to get certified. Always a bad idea. Now wait 6 months from now and they release a new version and there's a certain number of books available. We can have a conversation on whether it makes sense to start with the old version of the exam, which expires in 3 months from then, or whether you want to jump into the latest version. That's a different set of questions. And we can have that at the time. But if you're waiting for a release of an exam version that even CompTIA doesn't know when it's going to be released yet, or they've not told you when it's going to be released yet, then we're going the wrong direction. That's the wrong strategy. If we're trying to get a job or get a better job, go get your cert right now. There's no waiting on that one. So you thought I was going to give you an out. You thought I was going to allow you to procrastinate. I'm not. I'm going to tell you, do the exact opposite, because there is no better time in the lifetime of this cert. There is no better time to earn your certification than this current version, because you will never get to a point where there are more resources available than right now. That's the important part. So a great question, and one you should absolutely consider. And it's important to know. Employers, by the way, don't care which set of exams you take. All they care is if you are A+ certified. And if you're not sure about that, look at me or someone who's had their A+ certification for an extended period of time. The A+ certification that I earned more than 10 years ago and simply renewed every 3 years, because you don't have to take the exam again, you just renew it. You renew it every 3 years, which means you're A+ certified today from an exam you took 10 years ago. You are just as A+ certified as somebody who passes their second exam right now. Same A+ cert. You have the same standing from a perspective of an employer from both of those. So it's a good opportunity, good idea. And I think in many cases, it's logical for us to think new must be better. But in this case, new is not better. New is actually at a bigger disadvantage. And it's important that you consider that. Okay, let's have a look at other questions that you have. I know that we're at the top of the hour. We could fit in one more, right? I think we can. We've got a more, and by the way, another question that came in about the version of the course notes. Again, just look at the course notes version you have. If you have the 220.11.01 or the 220.11.02, you have the latest course notes. These are the right ones. That's what you should be using. Thankfully, CompTIA doesn't change the objectives every year. They don't change it as they go. They publish the objectives and they're locked in stone. There's only one time during the 700 series they changed the objectives in the middle. And they changed one set of objectives, just a tiny bit. Everybody got confused. There was a lot more of a problem. So that's the idea. I'll also tell you, they're going to try to promote the new version of the exam as having a lot of new content. I've already looked at the new exam objectives. It's not a lot of new content. You know why? COVID. What? Their computers don't get COVID. Yes, but we did. And one of the things you notice is 3 years ago, what version of Windows was the latest one? Windows 11. Okay, so what right now as we sit here, what's the latest version of Windows? Windows 11. This is the only time in the last 15 or 20 years of A+ where there's not a new version of Windows to talk about in the new version of the exam. So there's a lot less different in this new exam version than previous editions. It's interesting what that one thing did to our entire industry. And it's still affecting us in these certifications. So that's something to consider. And of course, they've already published the exam objectives for the new version. So you're welcome to look at them. You will be shocked how similar they are to each other. I will say fewer changes on this exam for A+ than in, I'll say, recorded history in the last 20 years. I think I've got most of the statistics to back that up. Certainly in the last 3 or 4 editions. We certainly have those statistics we can look at. Let's try to fit one more question in. I know we're at the top of the hour. Thank you for being a little bit in overtime here, but I got so many questions in. I wanted to kind of cover these and talk about what's good and what's bad, what's easy and what's not. Should I do this or should I do that? A lot of those questions are here. So it's good to go through these just so we know. There is quite a bit in this list to break out. So let's see what we have. And a lot of people think about a lot of questions in here about what versions. I think we've covered that one at this point. So I'm not going to cover each of those and break them down. There is an interesting part of this that I think we can talk about. And it's really about comparing the two different exams. So this is a frequently asked question that you can't see unless I put it up on the screen in the proper way. Here we go. The question asks, which one's tougher, the 1101 or 1102? In fact, a similar question I got in that list is, which should I do first? Should I do the 1102 first? Should I do the 1101 first? And the answer is it doesn't matter. You have to get both of them done anyway. It really doesn't matter which one you do first and which one you do second. I think from a tougher perspective, I will tell you that the difficulty level of both of these exams is very comparable. They're very similar to each other. I think the difficulty of the 1101 is pretty much the same as the difficulty of the 1102. But obviously, these are different exams with different topics. So this really comes down to what you have done with these technologies in the past. What's your knowledge of these? As you're probably aware, the 1101 is very focused on hardware and printers and troubleshooting. There's some networking in there. There's some cloud in there, but it's mostly a hardware-related exam. The 1102 is very focused on operating systems. And yes, there's security in there, and there's other topics. There's troubleshooting of operating systems, but it's very focused on operating systems. So really, you have these two exams. If we broadly talk about this, the 1101 is hardware, the 1102 is operating systems, just as a gross generalization of both. So if you have experience building your own computers, you've built gaming systems before, you've swapped out the memory in your existing desktop, you've replaced some video components on your system, the 1101 may be very familiar to you, the topics that are in there. You've worked with these cables, you've plugged into those interfaces, you've worked with these motherboards, you've had to find the right memory. You've already worked with those technologies. The 1101 will be very familiar. But if you're someone who's worked a lot just on the Windows side, maybe you've never cracked open a desktop computer, but you've worked a lot with Windows. Maybe you work in a help desk. Maybe you do a lot with Active Directory. Maybe you've worked in the Windows console. You've done a lot at with the control panel. You've worked through configuration settings. You're very good at the inner workings of Windows. The 1102 is probably going to seem easier to you. But I think if you know nothing about any of this, if you walk into it just as someone who's never looked at these technologies before, IT is brand new to you, I would say the 1101 and 1102 are both pretty much the same when it comes to difficulty level. But everybody's going to have their own best knowledge base. Everybody will have their own starting point. And because of that, you may find that one of these exams is easier than the other. So which one do you do first? Do you do the easy one first, once easy for you? Or do you wait and save that for last? I guess it's really up to you. You have to do both of them, so it really doesn't matter. But if you're getting into this and you're nervous about it, you've never taken one of these industry exams before, you're unsure of the process, and you just want to get through the first one, go with the easiest one for you. But if you want to end this up on a high note, you want to ease into the final exam, knowing a lot of the content, maybe you want to save it for last. Maybe you save the easy one for the last part. That's completely up to you. Figure out what's easiest for you, what you enjoy the most, what makes sense for you. That's where you should focus. I think that's the best way to kind of approach this. And I think if anybody is in the case of, I don't know which one I should do first, then it really shouldn't matter. Do them in order. Do the 1101 first, do the 1102. If you're someone who is enrolled at Western Governors University, WGU, they're somewhat famous for having you take the 1102 first and then take the 1101. So they prefer you to do it backwards, if you will. That's up to you. That's up to make sense for you. Now, if you're in their program, you don't have a choice. You do the 1102 first, then you do the 1101. But if you're doing this yourself, you get to decide what that happens to be. Either way, I think you're in fine shape. You're not really going to run into a scenario where you can't go any farther because you chose the wrong one. As I mentioned, both of the exams are relatively self-contained. So it's not a big deal. If you do one first, you do two first, doesn't really matter. Just get through both of them. And for the perspective of your scheduling, for understanding how you get through this, make sure you're able to get through both of those exams by the October-November timeframe of this year. If you can do that, that's the versions you should be working on. Now, if you know that there are some challenges in timing, if you know that you're not even going to be able to start this process until the summer, then you might want to wait. But you're not starting anyway until the summer. At that point, when you're ready to start your studies, is when you should evaluate what set of exams you should choose. And as I mentioned, we've not really gotten the point where we know the dates solidly yet. As soon as CompTIA shares a little more about the dates, we'll feel a little bit better over what we can definitively point to, recommend, and tell you from a scheduling perspective. But since we don't even have dates yet, the answer is relatively clear. You go with the current version. And indeed, you're probably better off. You're at a bigger advantage right now taking the current version than you ever will be waiting for a version that we still don't know when will be released. And certainly it will be released. I'm not saying it won't be. It will be released. We just don't know what the dates are. And the specific dates do make a difference. They are important. So we'll go and focus on that too. Well, I think that will probably now that we're at the top of the hour, I think that's probably a great place to kind of end the process, the procedures, what we're doing here right now. It's been a fantastic start to the year. We made it through the first live stream of the year. We made it through the first live stream with the new equipment. That was important for me. This was a good deal. And we get to do it again on Thursday. So if you're somebody who is working towards your Core 1 and your Core 2, and you'd like to go through more Q&A for Core 2 and ask more questions of me in a live study group, we'll do this again in 2 days. Come on back for our Core 2 study group. You can always find when the next live event is going to be at our calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar and let you know exactly when we will be live. We have so much that will be happening this year. We're so excited about doing these courses and updates and live streams, talking with you on our Discord, sending out our daily pop quiz questions. It's just going to be another fantastic year of technology, and we look so forward to going through it with all of you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for what you've done to make our site what it is. We are having a great time, and we're looking forward to 2025. We will see you on Thursday or whenever we see you next time. Thanks for joining us. See you next time on the A+ Study Group.